And then we're just going to get everything kicked off. Welcome to Entrepreneur School. Yes, this is so exciting. I'm really pleased to have Jennifer Lyall as our guest speaker today. Jennifer is an intuitive business coach. She calls herself the Chief Energy Optimizer, which is my favorite to hear her talk about. And today's conversation is all about making intuitive business decisions. So how to actually trust, I'm interpreting, but how to actually trust your gut that you're doing the right next thing. And maybe that's a clarification of not just like the right thing, because is there a right thing, but is there a right thing for you in that moment? And how do we kind of get there? So Jennifer is based out of Ontario, Canada.
Burlington, just outside of Toronto.
And we met in a networking group. I would say it's been like a year or 2 years almost since we came into my world. And she just brightens up the space all the time because she truly is like, even though I've only ever met you through a screen, Jennifer, like your energy does go right through it. So I'm super excited for this conversation today. And before we jump into it, just for anybody who's maybe watching on a replay, I just wanted to give a high level. What is Entrepreneur School? Why are we here? What are we doing? It's funny because I was talking this morning, I'm like, yeah, this is this exciting thing that we launched. And it's still a baby. So Entrepreneur School, like everything, will always continue to evolve. But as it stands, it is a community for entrepreneurs to connect with each other, to be introduced to resources and tools and amazing people like Jennifer who have expertise that they can share on different topics related to running your business. Because the truth is, there is no one size fits all path to how we approach and navigate through the challenges and the fun things as well of running a business. But we do need other people in our worlds to be able to lean on, learn from, and even just communicate with. So having just people in our corner, that is what this is all about, and trying to help streamline the many shiny objects that are out there into one kind of place where if you just come here, we'll give you like little flavors of things where you can decide whether you want to go down a path of further exploring with any of our speakers or any of the resources that we share, or not. Or you can just come to the events and you can be part of the community, and we welcome you here, whether you are a new business owner, whether you are aspiring to be one, or whether you are seasoned and you're just looking for a refresher or some new people in your world. So let's jump into the conversation, Jennifer, and I'll just hand it over to you.
So first, a little bit about me and my magic, and why am I talking about intuition in business? So how I first got into the spiritual world was I have a business. I started my business back in 2008. I started it as Live Healthy, and I do still have that line of my business. But I started it with a video podcast. This was when podcasting was at its infancy. And my intention was to inspire people to be proactive about their health. And so I co-produced and co-hosted over 50 episodes with the naturopathic doctor. And my intention was to just have a part-time business while my kids were at school, and I was going to get advertisers. But I had a big problem. I didn't believe in myself. So I found it really hard to get advertisers, and I only got a handful of them. And I came to this place where, I'm really smart. I have a Bachelor of Commerce with honors. I have a background in marketing, specialized in event planning. And it's like, I'm really smart. Why is this not coming together? I was not getting the results that I wanted at all. And so I came to this place of just feeling like, I give myself permission to figure out what makes my heart sing, because this isn't quite it. And so it was this pivotal moment. It was pitch black outside. It was March of 2010. The house was completely quiet and no one was awake yet. And I didn't know quite what I believed in. I didn't know if I believed in God or what, but I felt like there's always some sort of higher power. And I just said, okay, whatever you are, I give myself permission to figure out what makes my heart sing. And it was like in that moment of surrender that something clicked inside. And I started to notice more synchronicities. I started to let go of control of how I thought things needed to be, because that pushing just wasn't working. And my whole world opened up to a spiritual wonderland. So I discovered meditation, I discovered automatic writing, I discovered crystals, and the most pivotal tool that supported me in developing my intuition and in making decisions was a pendulum. And so I had gone to this event called the Ancaster Gem Show. So it was an event where all these people from lapidary societies, so those are the people who like to go on digs and find rocks and fossils and different semi-precious stones, go out hiking and actually dig. There were those people there, but there were also a lot of spiritual people there. And after I had that moment of sitting on my couch and saying, okay, I give myself permission to figure out what makes my heart sing, I went to this networking event. And at that event, we were all encouraged to help out each other and exchange services. And so with me having expertise in podcasting, this lady stood up and said, well, I'll do a soul reading for anybody who wants that. If you can help me with something in my business. It's just like, ooh, a soul reading. That sounds like that'll help me figure things out. And so through that, and it's interesting because that's part of what I do today is tuning into the energy of a person's soul and their purpose. And it's a lot like what Kelly does too in her work as she is tuning into your brand magic and your brand essence. So as much as Kelly says that she sees my magic, I see her magic too. So I just wanted to add that in there. Yes, big hearts for sure. The fairy brand mother for a reason, because she's got her magic wand and she does all sorts of magic, right?
You know what? But what you're saying there is so it's interesting because sometimes like you just need another person's perspective. Like I don't see it the way you see it, and there's a reason for that. But when you have somebody externally even saying, like, I think we had this conversation one time when we had a one-on-one, and you were like, you do this deep stuff. And I'm going like, oh, it's a strategy. It's like strategic. And you're like, the first thing you do is ask people who they are. So that takes a lot.
It does. It does. And it takes something really significant to create the safe container for somebody to go there too.
Mm,
So
yeah.
that magic wand that you were drawn to is a symbol of something much more significant for you in your business and for what you do. It's fun.
Thank you.
It's much more than that. So in that soul reading, she told me to go and get a deck of cards, like oracle cards. So I did, and that was just to help me with tapping into my intuition. And as I did that, this deck that I had was saying, hey, it was a fairy card, a fairy deck, of course. I knew you would love that. And it was talking about this rose quartz crystal. And it's just like, so I became curious about crystals. So that's why I was at that gem show. So I was really, really excited to be there. And I get there. Oh, you got some rose quartz there. I've got
rose quartz here. Yeah.
I've got lots. I've got a collection of over 200 crystals.
This one. I don't know what this is.
Oh, if I had to guess, I would say maybe apophyllite, but I'm not quite sure. It's a beautiful cluster though. And
A beautiful woo friend gave it to me.
yeah, that speaks to community. So for me and community, this is what I've got in my space. It's a spirit quartz.
Ooh,
and all of these tiny little, so there's some bigger crystal formations, and then there's all these little tiny ones, and it really speaks to community and the significance of community in my journey. So when I got to the Ancaster Gem Show, I really needed to go to the bathroom, but I really wanted to go and check out these booths. And I was just like, oh, what am I going to do? So I had something to eat quickly. And then it's just like, all right, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And then this voice in my head said, go to the bathroom. And so I went to the bathroom, and right outside of the bathroom, there were two booths. One was for a lapidary society, but my eyes kept going to the booth next to it, which was the Canadian Society of Dowsers. And so using a pendulum is called dowsing. And so I met this incredible woman who taught me about how she would use a pendulum to help understand how to channel energy for people and get intuitive answers, get answers from a higher power, God, universe, whatever you want to call that. And so I'm sitting with her and then seeing this like pendulum move in magical ways. It's just like, what is this? And so while I was there, and I went through all the booths, this lady who had a spiritual booth with crystals gave me a Szechuan quartz crystal, just the stone itself, and said, go make a pendulum with it. And so I'm carrying this little quartz. I lost it. That pendulum went to somebody else. I'm carrying this little stone with me. And then I go to say goodbye to my friend Joan from the Canadian Society of Dowsers. And I showed her what I got. And guess what Joan was making when I went to the booth? She was making pendulums. So she gave me the wire that I needed to make that into my first pendulum. So with a pendulum, what it taught me, it took me a whole year between the pendulum and meditation. It took that long for me to detach from that demand of needing to know the right answer. I need an answer. I need to know. And it helped me to surrender and trust. And so now with my pendulum, I feel the sensation of the answer and of the response before it swings. So it's like picking up this pendulum is almost like this anchor of saying, okay, universe, I'm here and I'm talking to you. This is the tool that I'm using to speak to you with. Let's have a conversation. And so like when we talk about what is intuition, it's just this natural ability to tune into this greater knowing that we all have access to. And I want to really stress that like top business people bring their intuition into their business in order to make big business decisions. So Jeff Bezos, he says, all of my best decisions in business and in life have been made with heart and intuition, not analysis. When you can make a decision with analysis, you should. But it turns out that in life, that your most important decisions are always made with instinct, intuition, and heart. Steve Jobs, in his biography, he said intuition is a very powerful thing, more powerful than intellect. Steven Spielberg, the filmmaker, I want to be clear that your intuition is different than your conscience. Your conscience shouts, here's what you should do, while your intuition whispers, here's what you could do. Oprah. Yeah, you felt that one, did you?
I have total goosebumps from that. Mm-hmm.
Oprah says, she attests her success to trusting her intuition. You cannot hear the still small voice of your instinct and your intuition if you allow the noise of the world to drown it out. And Richard Branson, think about how many businesses he has. I rely far more on gut instincts than researching huge amounts of statistics. So these are all names that you are familiar with. And these are people who have built massive international businesses. And they use the foundation of their intuition to guide them. So some of the biggest challenges, like what do you find are the challenges that you come up against when it comes to trusting your intuition? And Jessica, you too. What do you find? If you're okay with sharing, if you're comfortable with sharing.
Oh, for me, it's that control. Like, I think the first thing I just wrote down from what you were saying was just surrender and trust. And that's very uncomfortable for me as a person who likes to control everything, outcomes, decisions, potential impacts of those things.
Mhm. Jessica, do you feel like contributing, or if you prefer not to, that's okay? No? Okay, no problem. So I totally get it. So I mentioned earlier, I have a background in event planning. So in event planning, you have to know where all those pieces are. You have to know who's doing what, and you have to control all that to bring together the event, right? Any launches you do as an entrepreneur, just as being an entrepreneur, there are so many pieces that you're pulling together. So there is a big control thing. And that's why it took me a year to learn how to truly trust and surrender to my intuition, because I was like, damn it, I want an answer. Why isn't this thing working? Because I could see Joan using it and it would go back and forth, and it would go back and forth, but I would feel kind of icky, or I would feel funny. It's just like, okay, that doesn't feel like the right answer. It's more like what you're telling me. And it's true. You have to be in this neutral place of detachment to be able to truly listen, because what you're doing is, it's almost like you have to shake yourself silly to let go of all of the crap, of all the programming, of what everybody told you of how you should be doing things, from your parents, from your family, from your previous employers, from what the media is, and the government, and like everything is telling you. The movies are telling you of how you should be and what you should aspire to and what you should want in your life. You're shaking yourself loose from that and going inside to tap into that same juiciness that inspired you to start your business in the first place. And having to do that over and over again, because you can be there for 10 minutes, an hour, and then you get an email in your inbox, you see something on social media, you're dealing with whatever client or whatever, and then it takes you out of it again. So it's constantly coming back to that truth of who you really are.
So interesting. You use the word should so many times in that like description. And that's a word that I have been noticing. If it comes into my mind, am I doing the should, or am I exploring the could?
So another thing that a lot of entrepreneurs find challenging is distinguishing that voice. Who is that voice that is in your head? Is that the ego? Is that your grade 3 teacher? Is that you? Oftentimes that voice, like how Oprah said, that still small voice is just a whisper. So you have to be able to stop long enough to hear it, and then have the courage to trust it, especially when it's taking you in crazy places. I literally thought like I was going crazy as I went down the rabbit hole of the spiritual wonderland, because I was so used to just controlling everything. And with the process of automatic writing, and I promise you, whoever is listening to this, you've done automatic writing at some point in your life, whether it comes through when you're journaling, maybe you love poetry and sometimes the words just flow, or I know that I can relate to having done it when I was in high school and university, being a bit of a procrastinator, leaving things for last minute, and then writing and writing and writing those assignments and then reviewing it the next morning before I go to hand it in. It's like, dang, this is good. Like, where did this come from? I'm really good. Like there's something more going on there.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you distinguish whose voice is that? And one key way to help you with distinguishing whose voice that is that you hear is your intuition will never should you, will never shame you, will never make you feel fearful. Like you might feel kind of like, oh, I'm not sure if I should do this, and excited, kind of like edge of your seat, going skydiving kind of thing, that kind of fear and excitement, but never like deer in the headlights, fear and shame. Like your intuition will never, ever make you feel like that.
Mm.
So I came from this place of needing to control everything. And then through automatic writing, I was given my own modality called Connect to You. And the intention of that work is to connect the soul with the heart and the mind. So we have three brains. We have our intuitive brain, our emotional brain, and our logical brain. And we just get so caught up in the logical mind. That's what we're taught. That's what we're taught. We're taught to shut down our emotions, as little girls, as children, general, girl, boy, whatever. As children, our parents are often exhausted and they can't handle all of the emotions from the children. So it gets shut down. Shut up. Shut up. Go to your room. Stop crying. Come on, get over it. They can't handle the whole bundle of emotions. They don't have the emotional intelligence because they were never taught how to process their emotions. So to see a child out of control. So we're so disconnected from our emotions to be able to really tune into it and honor it and trust it and to have the courage to follow it. Whenever I meet somebody who's at a bit of a crossroads in their business or in life, and they're trying to figure out what they want to do when they grow up, because I was there at that place, that moment of surrender. And it really is about trusting that feeling in your heart and having that courage to do so. And to be able to say to, your husband or whoever, I don't quite know what's coming up next, but I know that there's something pulling me forward. It takes a lot of courage. A lot of courage.
Yeah, especially when there's another person involved in that conversation. Personally, I can totally relate to this in very recent as this weekend, in the last week, making a very big decision because something isn't going the way that I planned it to be. And, the revenue isn't coming where I thought it was going to come from. So what about this other opportunity that just popped up and it feels like the right time, but it doesn't also feel like the right time because of the financial impact that it has, like as an investment and all of this. And that's that, how do you have to be on board, right? With that belief in yourself and that trust to get somebody else on board with it.
Mm-hmm. And that's so tricky when you've been conditioned your whole life for what it needs to look like. Those A's you're supposed to get in school, right? And you're supposed to follow this XYZ step and it's supposed to look like this. You go to school and you get your degree or your diploma, or you pursue some sort of focus. And then you pivot into something totally new. They didn't talk about this intuitive stuff at career day at high school.
No.
And yet it is so foundational for every single entrepreneur, that intuitive instinct and that belief in yourself. And, that's so much of the work that I do with my clients, is peeling back all of those energetic layers of the shame, of the shoulds, of the don't want to say the word trauma because I'm not trained in how to deal with trauma. Drama, we'll go there with drama. And the thing is that there's stuff that comes up that we don't even realize how much it's impacting us. Okay, so one of the places where I went on my spiritual journey is I went down to Sedona, Arizona on a soul adventure. And on this journey, so I hadn't figured out what I wanted to do yet. And one of the things that we did was I did. So what the soul adventure was, she's like, okay, so what's going on with you and why are you being drawn here? And I wanted to figure out what made my heart sing. And so they planned out an itinerary for me as to having different sessions. There's this goddess meditation, an astrology session. And the very first thing I did was a karma clearing session. And so this woman sat in front of me with a binder that was about 4 inches thick. She held up a pendulum and she was asking questions to the universe. And I was in her office, sitting on a couch, blanket pulled up to my chest, a box of Kleenex next to me, and a garbage in front of me. And she's asking these questions. It's like, okay, what lifetime are we going to? And she went through all of these different lifetimes. She'd be asking questions and going through pages in her big binder, which had something called a ray chart. Okay, I need to show this picture and folder for everyone. So just give me a second here. A ray chart is so powerful, so powerful. It has done so many wonderful things for me in my life for getting clarity. So what a ray chart looks like is like this. And then you can put different options, A, B, C, D. So in her 4-inch binder, she had a whole bunch of different ray charts where she was tuning into, okay, how many lifetimes ago is it? What's the scenario that was going on? Was it a vow? What was it? A promise? Was it a sacred contract? What was the situation? So she's using the pendulum to get some guidance and then also tuning in intuitively. But she's going, so there she is asking the questions, the pendulum swinging. She's describing these far out situations and I'm bawling my eyes out. There was a lifetime where I was a nun. And I was channeling messages and I thought I was channeling God, but I was channeling discarnate souls and I was giving people bad information. And so I took a vow of silence. So I needed to release that in order to be able to have the courage to share my voice and share what I do and to share these channeled messages that I get for people. There was another lifetime where I was a monk. And we were doing wonderful things in our monastery. We were healing people, but there were people in another community that did not like what we were doing and killed all of us. There was another lifetime where I was with my husband and I was a medicine woman and he was a warrior and our village was attacked. And I have this vivid image in my mind of like crying and like holding people that are dead. And there's just so many there. I just can't help all of them. And so here I was with my previous business, with my video podcast. I wanted to really inspire people to be proactive about their health, but I didn't want to become a nutritionist. I didn't want to become a naturopathic doctor. I didn't want to be responsible for anybody else's well-being because I got killed for that. Like, and then horrible things happen to people who I cared about in other lifetimes. It's just like, oh, now I get it. Now I understand why I didn't want to do that and why there was so much resistance within me. And that's the thing, as I'm working with clients, we're peeling back so many different energetic layers of things that hold people back from this lifetime, but very often we're going into other lifetimes. And we don't realize how it's been passed down energetically to us. So there's stuff that's ancestral karma, and that comes into a science. It's called epigenetics. And that is just like how our DNA is passed down from generation to generation. Energy gets passed down from generation to generation. So one big thing in my family that I've been working through is the whole lack mindset. I'm the baby of 7, so my family really struggled. Both my parents lived through World War II, so they're, getting rationed, barely having enough money, a lot of things going on, bombs going off. Their parents grew up in World War I, so you really scrimp and save, you scrap things together, and all of these sacrifices are made, and then we just don't know how that impacts us. And I see the language that I use really repeating and impacting my kids too. So it's pretty crazy. We don't know where that other conditioning, those other thoughts that hold us back, why it stops us, and why sometimes we get paralyzed when it comes to making decisions.
Yeah, that's deep.
Yeah. So how about if we start to look at that whole decision-making process, make it easier? So, yeah, I covered that. What do you need to know to make good decisions? All right, I'm going to share a couple of slides here because I think it will be helpful. Let me actually do this first, though. Oh, no. Okay. We'll see how this goes. Are you seeing my screen for my PowerPoint?
I see your desktop. Yeah.
Okay, that didn't quite work. PowerPoint. Huh. Desktop too. Desktop too. Nope, I don't want desktop too. I want this. Now do you see it? Okay. Thank you. All right. All right, so we went through that already. So what do you need to know to make good business decisions? Well, there's a few things. First, you need to have the clarity on where you go. What do you want? Because if you don't know what your destination is, it's difficult to make a decision, right? You can't go to a travel agent and just say, I want to go on vacation. They're going to say, where do you want to go? Even if you start to narrow it down to say, well, I want to go to Europe. Okay, what kind of things do you want to do? Do you want to do like beaches and museums? I mean, museums could be anywhere, but you have to have an idea of what the destination is. And then you need to believe in, interesting, I can't get away from the word believe. You have to believe in your intentions and your vision. So just to have your vision at arm's length and have an idea, it's like, oh yeah, that sounds good. So maybe you've seen some sort of, maybe you've seen another kind of professional and you see a business model that they have and you think, yeah, that looks good. And logically it does. But if it doesn't kind of get you right there in the heart and you don't believe that it can be possible for you, then it's going to be difficult for you to make decisions because you're going to have a value conflict going on inside. If you don't really value that kind of business model, if you're not feeling that pull and that draw forward, it's going to be difficult. So you need to believe, know what your intentions are and your vision and believe in it. Because otherwise it's just going to be, you can do something and just feel, yeah, okay, whatever, it just is. What is your perception of success for your business, for your career? What does success look like? Is it an income level? Is it working a certain number of hours per week? Is it taking 6 weeks off in the summer and 4 weeks off a month of December off? Whatever, maybe you want to have that laptop lifestyle. And so you want to live minimalistically. And you also want to be able to work from wherever and not be tied down. Like, so what is that perception of success? Is it the dollars? Is there a level of freedom? Is there a level of quality of life for like time? Are there certain things you want to acquire? Is it the legacy that you want to live, that you want to leave behind? And what does success mean for this particular situation? So once you've gone to the bigger vision, whatever decision it is that you're making, what's the success look like for this? Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I totally believe that success is subjective, right? And that sometimes becomes the challenge is that when we're trying to achieve someone else's version of success, that's when we're not in alignment and congruent and even moving forward towards what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what is intuitive decision making? Well, intuitive decision making is where you bring in your 6 senses that are not just the way the regular 5 senses are. There's a different energetic component to it. So there's clairaudience where you hear intuitively. So this can show up where, like the story I shared earlier, how I was sitting there and I had the message in my head, go to the bathroom. It could come up, and I bet you this comes up for you a lot. And it did come up earlier in our conversation where words jump out at you. So earlier, the word should jumped out at you. And I'm
Mm.
sure as you're working with your clients in the branding, you're listening to the words and you feel the energy behind the words,
Yeah.
right? So that is intuitively hearing. So it could also show up where you're listening to the radio and maybe you were just thinking about a question and then you turn on the radio and a song comes on and the lyrics at that moment is the answer to the question that you were just contemplating. Or there's a John Tesh radio station and they are talking about these fun facts of stuff. And that's the answer that you were just looking for. It comes up. Or somebody telling you like 3 times recommending that, oh, you need to read this book. I just read it, right? The power of 3, the rule of 3 is something to go by for, guys, it's really my intuition. The power of 3. If you hear it 3 times, trust it. It's a sign. Tasting. This is where you can get like a taste that just comes up for you. So I don't get this one so much, but sometimes, you can have this like, oh, I can almost taste grandma's cookies, or somebody who's a sommelier or a chef would have this sense really strong. And there's times when I'm cooking where it's like, oh, I have a flavor coming in my mouth for what do I want to add into the dish. Intuitively smelling. This a chef and a sommelier would also have this very strong too, but sometimes I smell scents that nobody else smells. Sometimes people will smell like their grandmother's perfume and the grandmother has passed. Sometimes I'll smell mint and I'll be asking people like, do you smell mint? Do you smell mint? And like, did you just brush your teeth or are you sucking on a mint? But no, nobody's smelling mint. And there's something significant in what was just happening, somebody I was connecting with or the conversation that has a spiritual significance for me. So that's what I've come to recognize. Intuitively seeing. So some people can see like auras, the energy field around people. I have a friend of mine that, when she walks through life, she sees this energy field around everybody and everything. A tree, a person. So she'd be looking at us and seeing all these different colors around us. Some people see spirits. Those are mediums. They can often see spirits of people past, or whether or not they actually see the full detail of it is It depends on the individual. Sometimes they might just see an energy and a presence behind somebody when they're connecting in with someone's energy. And this could also come from things jumping out at you. You see that feather on the ground, or you might look at a headline on a magazine and it jumps out at you. It's just like, maybe it's like you wanted to do a triathlon or try or whatever, and then they're on the front cover of the magazine at the grocery store checkout counter is 5 best triathlons for you to try before you turn 50 or whatever. So things like that can show up for intuitively seeing. Clairsentience is where you get this feeling emotionally or physically. The truth bumps, the shivers you had earlier, that's a clairsentience. And claircognizance is this intuitively knowing things. You don't know how you know, but you just know. And there's just this compelling feeling that that's truth. And that's your claircognizance. So with intuitive decision making, not only do you bring in, well, for business, I do my due diligence still. I look at the numbers, I look at the facts, I look at the logic. But then I also go with my gut instinct, because there's a lot of times where I'll see something's just like, oh, it looks good on paper. But then there's just something inside that says, I don't know about this.
So do people access sort of all of those, or like there's just different strengths, or kind of like?
That's a great question. We all have the ability to tap into all of those senses. And we do. And we don't realize it, right? We think about when you're driving, right? You might intuitively see something that you don't consciously see. It's just in your peripheral vision, but something tells you got to pay attention to it, and you just instantly react. And maybe you just miss somebody who is about to sideswipe you, but you weren't looking there, but you caught something out of the corner of your eye, and there's something inside of you that said, whatever. A friend of mine, I remember her telling a story of, she was driving along and something said to her, look in the rearview mirror. And she did. And there was a car that was coming right for her. And she was able to get up onto the boulevard and avoided a crash. So there are times where we don't know why we're doing something, but we do it. We are receptors. We are always receiving this information. Think about how many, like, millions of bits of information we're always receiving. We've just been trained to focus on more of those physical senses, but we're actually taking information in energetically as well. And it's just a matter of practicing it like any other language. So when I started to develop my intuition, I remember attending this workshop, and it was about angel communication. And so there was probably about 20 of us there, and this lady's talking about, okay, there's this angel, and this is what they are there for supporting in, and they typically are represented with this color, and they kind of feel like this. And then she would take us through this visualization and meditation to connect in with each angel. And this one person would be over here, oh my gosh, I was with Archangel Michael, and we were like at the park, and he was pushing me on a swing set or whatever. And like all these people are having these beautiful, vivid images. It's just like, I don't see any of that. That's not fair. And I was just having a little temper tantrum. I would see maybe a little bit of color and a little, maybe a wave of how energy would move. But in time, I started to get flashes of information, and I might see kind of like a movie clip of like 2 seconds in my mind's eye. So people tend to have a dominant intuitive sense. And once you start to recognize what that is, you start to build the trust with that one. And then when you let go of your resistance of, I need to know how to do that, the other ones start to come on board. And it just depends on how much you like any other muscle. That's why a chef and a sommelier, they're using this clairgustance and clairalliance all the time. They're using those senses all the time. So they're really practiced at it. So you could give them a random thing and they'd be able to pick it out of a lineup what it is and sense it on so many different levels.
Right. Yeah. And so now that you've highlighted that, I like keep picking out words and I'm like very auditory like that. I am hearing the word believe again, like you picked up on earlier, and trust, right? And the combination of those things being how you navigate that. Because at the end of it, like you have to get to a place where you're taking an action or making a decision or like having something happen, which means you have to be conscious of something.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And this is where it all starts from. So you have to make a good decision, you have to have clarity as to what your end result is. What is important for you? What is your intention around this?
Mm.
What do you believe? Do you believe this can be possible for you? And then as you are looking at this particular piece of that bigger puzzle, what does success look like for that? So you have the yardstick of how you're going to measure your decision by. Now you got to look at yourself. If you are exhausted, if you are cranky, if you are mad, you are not going to make an intuitive business decision. You're going to be reacting from those other voices. So you're bringing to the party your mom, your grade 3 teacher, your boss from 5 years ago, and you're letting them make the decision about your future.
Oh, that's such a good point. Like I was saying, this is super timely for me because I was making a big decision and it happened after something really bad happened. Something that was very disappointing that I didn't see coming. Basically, long story short, lost a client. And I put myself on at least a week-long decision-making hiatus. I'm like, do not make any decisions right now. You're still mad.
Yes.
Do not throw everything in the garbage because there's these emotions that are attached to how you are just responding to what's happening right now. And then like let something come later, which it did.
Yes. So you have to take care of who you're being when you're making that decision. So who's coming to the party? And what I like to teach is around how to check your inner battery and boost your energy before you make a decision. You want to make sure you're feeling fantastic. I call it the thriving state. So it's where you're feeling fantastic physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You give yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, you're rating yourself an 8, 9, or 10 in all of those areas. That is where you want to make a decision from. Because Dr. Joe Dispenza, you may be familiar with him. He's a neuroscientist, and he's done a ton of research on human potential and how we go through life. And one of the things he talks about is that by the time we're 35, 95% of what we do is on autopilot. And so that's all the stuff from the past. And he talks about how you cannot think greater than how you feel. So if you're not in a good state of being, that is not a good state to make a decision for your best and highest good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard before, like never make a decision out of fear, right? Like, oh, I'm scared that I don't have revenue coming in. So now I have to find a different way to make revenue. And that's the way I'm going to make this decision. No.
So I'd love to share with the few minutes that we have left here. I'd love to share a decision-making worksheet that I think will be really supportive for people as they make a decision here. So let me pull that up. Is this going to work? Oh, this is one. Do you see that?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So let's pretend that you're making a decision about which virtual assistant option is best for you. What you would do is you would create a chart. And so this process I adapted from a business consultant that I'd worked for 20 plus years ago, because I found it debilitating trying to make decisions. Like when we first moved into our house, we were painting our kitchen blue. And there's this little strip of wall just above the kitchen sink. So there's a window, a little strip of wall, and then ceiling, and there's cupboards on both sides. So it's maybe, 6 inches by about 3.5 feet. It's like, ooh, do I paint it white like the ceiling, or do I paint it blue like the wall? And it's just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to make a hard decision. And my mother-in-law was laughing at me. It's like, no one's going to die over it. But that's how traumatized I was around making decisions and so fearful of making a bad decision. So he talked about, evaluating it based on the different parameters. So if we were to think about which virtual assistant is best for me, let's say there's 3 different options, and then you will evaluate it based on how you're feeling as you consider these options, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Is it getting you closer to or further from your vision? And then coming up with a total and using that to help you with making your decision. So first, you need to look at what are the parameters for making that decision. So there's the logical aspect. Well, you want there to be an ease of working together. You want to be able to delegate more. So looking at the different options. So for me, if I was making this decision, I have a current VA, my tech team, they also have the capability of doing some VA work, or I could go with a whole new option. So there's the ease of continuity working together. There's being able to delegate more, being able to grow my business faster because I don't have to do it all, looking at what my budget is, and the ability to work with my current systems, right? So there's all the logical things. So then now I look at those different options and I look at the first one. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how does it feel to keep working with my current VA? And then same thing for the tech team and then the new VA. And then what's fascinating is we know. So as I tune in, I go, I can't write in that, but that's okay. If I was to check in on a scale of 1 to 10, considering all those parameters, how do I feel physically with the current VA? A 9 out of 10. And then with the tech team, an 8 out of 10. And with the new VA company, it's a 7 out of 10. Emotionally, it's an 8 out of 10 for my current VA. And I feel some excitement, but also it's just like, there's some quirks. There are some quirks. And they get a little frustrating. So that's why it's not quite so high. The tech team, it's a 7. There's some things I really like about them, but there's been a lot of things that have been disappointing from more of like a VA perspective. Like the tech stuff, great, but there's some of the VA communication that hasn't been great. And the new VA company, it feels really exciting because what I love about them is the wide variety of tasks that they could do, and that there's a main contact person, but there's a whole bunch of other people too. So if somebody's off sick, there's other people to pick up the work. Mentally, a 9 for my current VA because we've got a rhythm. I just don't know what her capacity is. Tech team, a 9 because there is a familiarity there. And I really believe that they are looking out for my best and highest good. And mentally, the new VA company, it's an 8 because there's that trust. And can they really do it? Will they really follow through? It kind of looks good on paper, but will it really be there? And then spiritually, to tune in, for my current VA, a 9. Like she gets me. And for the tech team, a 9. And for the new VA company, it feels about a 7.5. There's that trust. Yeah, a little bit of that trust. And so for my current VA, does she get me closer to or further from my vision? That feels like a 7 for closer to. It's because of her capacity. And the tech team feels like a 9 because they have greater capacity, and the new VA company feels like a 9. So then as I add all of that up, I've been putting that on here, I'll get a score. And then I'll also just do a kind of final check-in of, gut instinct, what will it be? So 27 plus 15 is 30, 42, 27 plus 42 for both the first two columns. And then 18 plus 15 is 33, 40, 40.5. So they're really close. So what that also tells me then, as I look at that, because the numbers are all the same, I won't go terribly wrong with any of them,
Hmm.
right? So it's not as if I can make a bad decision.
Right.
But if, if there is something about, one of the options where it's just like, oh, I felt this like heaviness in my heart or this draining pit in my stomach, then it'd be like, that's a sign that you need to listen to. So I help my husband when he's building his team and picking new candidates. And the last time he had to do this, he was looking at two potential candidates. One was an internal hire and the other was an external hire. And so I took him through this exercise. He had interviewed both of them and he was having a hard time making a decision. And so I took him through the exercise and they both had a very similar rating. But when it came to that emotional score for the person that was the internal hire, he's like, oh, I feel like I'm going to be let down and disappointed. It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And so that was on a Friday. On the Monday, she withdrew her application. And then within a month, she left the company. So he sensed that. And I believe that we have that intuition to tune in and to understand.
Right. 'Cause it's like there's so many layers to decisions sometimes. Like, am I making this choice because it seems easier? Because I can't, like, I don't have the, or because I don't have the energy to actually deal with the outcome of making the decision.
Well,
Right. If I make a change, or like if in this particular situation, you decide to hire a new company, right? There's a whole onboarding, there's a whole new contract, new relationship. And if that seems like draining, that's another
but
thing to check
that's
in.
why you have to go to that bigger vision. You still have to look at that bigger vision, because if you just look at the uncomfortableness of making that change, then you'll stay stuck. You have to be connected in with that bigger vision of what it is that's pulling you forward. And that's
Mhm.
going to take you out of your comfort zone. And it might be, 2 or 3 months of really stickiness, but then afterwards, the expansion in your capacity, if it opens things up so that you're able to take on 5 new clients and the revenue you generate from those 5 new clients is, 10 or 20 times the cost of bringing on that resource, well, it's a no-brainer. You have to believe in yourself, your intention, that vision. So there's a lot about your own preparation in order to be able to make those decisions confidently.
Ooh, this is so good. I think it's really important to have that different perspective. There's a different way that we can make decisions. And it can be an and, right? Like you included logic in there, like mentally considering those mental things and considering, because we have kind of different strengths, right? Like some people think primarily with their heads and some people think primarily with their hearts and some people think primarily with their gut. But all really kind of should be part of it, I think, is what you're saying.
Well, you don't cut your head off and just make a decision just from your head over there, right? We
Yeah.
were, I talked about the 3 brains, right? The intuitive brain, the emotional brain, and the mental brain, and they all have wisdom to bring forth.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to learn how to allow all of those parts of you to bring forth the wisdom that's going to take you through your entire life. Because think about, if you ever watched the TV show, oh gosh, with Sheldon in it,
The Big Bang
The
Theory.
Big Bang Theory, right? And how much in his head Sheldon was. There's your example of just only looking at the logical. And that just doesn't truly work in the world,
Yeah,
right?
totally gonna tell my husband that next time he makes a decision like that.
There you go. There you go. So we need to bring in all of those aspects of ourselves in order to truly feel confident in our decision-making process. Because if we don't, there's going to be that niggly doubt. And I think that the other thing to really bring forth is, especially as entrepreneurs are getting started in their business, you can't make a bad decision.
Mhm.
You're just making a choice. If it's something that you're going to learn from, maybe you don't get the results that you were hoping you were going to get. I just participated in this marketing experiment and paid for um, paid to be in front of somebody else's audience, and I still don't have the final results, but it didn't turn out the way I hoped it would. But there are still some other perks that I wasn't expecting that could actually open things up to far greater benefits in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
So sometimes the benefits aren't always immediate.
Right.
Sometimes there's relationship building, or there's something greater that comes in the future, that if you just only look at what's like right there, and you don't give it time to like sink in and to trust in it a bit, right? Because like, if let's say you're evaluating a new system to go with, and there's that whole overwhelm of trying to adjust, and I think about when I went to my back end system, I use a platform called Kartra, and it's huge and it's overwhelming. I am good with data, and so in time, as I got used to it, I got a decent handle on it. And then I have my tech team for anything that's really complicated, but I can go in and do like the immediate things. My VA is good with, she's figured it out. But initially it's just like, and and when I started my business, it took me 2 years to launch an online course. And it had to do with me not believing in myself, me having a story in my head about how complicated it was. But when I connected with my tech team, they're like, oh, it's really easy. There's this platform you use. Here's how you do it. You have the data there, and we'll set it all up for you. And boom. So I stewed over it for 2 years, and they had it up and running in like 6 weeks. And so it seems like it's overwhelming, but when you can let go of that overwhelm and just kind of trust in it, makes a big difference for how you expand and grow in your business.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you acknowledge the challenge that it takes, and the time that it takes, and the work that it takes, and that it's a constant work to continue. Because I'm sure you've gone through like feeling really tapped in and really confident and really like even maybe quick decision making, to being stalled again about something else because stuff comes up and it just ebbs and flows, just like everything else, right?
It does. It does. And it's gotten easier over the last couple of years as I have mastered my energy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a big thing.
Yeah.
So if I can offer, just to wrap up,
Yeah.
just a couple of things here. Just if anybody would like to, that didn't do it, did it? Oh, did it do it? Oh, it did do it.
I'm seeing the side by side, but yeah.
You're seeing side by side.
Well, I'm not seeing like presentation mode.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'll put back up. There we go.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I find is really overwhelming for entrepreneurs is, especially when you're trying to decide what direction to go in the future, or what kind of programs to offer. So I have a free e-course called From Scattered to Focus, and I take you through the process of how to prioritize your ideas, how to evaluate them, so that you know where to focus in your business. And so they can go to my website for jlyall.com/focus. Or if they're interested, we talked a lot about the pendulum and about the intuition. If you are interested in developing your intuition, I do have an e-course that's available for purchase on my website. And I teach you how to use a pendulum as well as use oracle cards to help you with developing your intuition. And I go through those rate charts and and take you through some examples of how you would use that in your life and in your business. So
Amazing. Thank you. We'll make sure that that's all linked in the blog write up that goes with this recording. And thank you for being here and sharing your magic with us and sharing and like going super deep and personal on a lot of that. It was a beautiful conversation.
It was exactly what we needed to do. Thank you so much for your listening, for the invitation. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone watching. I'm so excited to hear what this opens up for you and your potential in your business.
Perfect.